Hi everybody, it's Ian from the Pop Pickers Band, and today, look who's here. I've got Danny Rowlands, the new pop picker, the band's drummer, so he's come to have a chat today. And the first thing I'm going to say, Danny, is that you've been drumming since 1963.
That's right, Ian.
So
Yeah.
how did that start? How did you get into drumming? Why didn't you play the guitar?
Well, I have trouble playing the drums. No, basically, I used to go jump in the river and getting bootfuls and missing the other side of the bank and that. But my brother used to play in a brilliant band called The Boys.
Oh,
And in Portsmouth in those days, in '63, I think there were probably about 15 bands total, including the Storms, the Crescendos, the
I
Meteors
remember the
UK.
Crescendos.
Crescendo's great band, all in their silver grey
Yeah, I
suits,
remember that.
velvet jackets and velvet collars. Brilliant
Yeah.
band. And my brother used to have a guy in his band called Ashley Barron. Immaculate hair, tailored suits all the time. He was a male nurse, and they rehearsed at my house on a Wednesday night in the kitchen.
Right.
And every time he'd come out, he'd have a different girl with him. And he
Oh,
always looked amazing and a brilliant drummer. And at 13, you're quite influenced by people.
especially older siblings and so
Yeah,
on. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I thought I could get into this.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was a great lad. And moving forward slightly, when I had my first boy, because we lost twins and that, I called him Ashley after my brother's drummer,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And then I bought my first kit off of him, and then for 25 quid.
Yeah.
Um,
That was
which
quite
was
a bit of money in those days, wasn't it? Back in 1963.
yeah,
£25. I mean,
that was an amazing
I
amount
was
of
going
money.
to say that's for the
It took me a long time to pay him back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I never even had no cases, couldn't afford a stall, only
Yeah.
had one crash ride cymbal.
Right.
But I learnt in my bedroom and I used to put all the Hollies records on.
All right.
And that was the guy that influenced
Well,
me.
what did the neighbours think of you practicing drums in the bedroom?
Terrible.
What about mum and dad?
Well, I never had a dad. He cleared off. He said he'll be back later, but he never said what year.
Oh, right, okay.
But my mum, I actually come from a musical family. My mum used to play the piano in all the pubs in town in Portsmouth. And I remember used to go and sit in the family room. Pubs had family rooms in because, they took their kids, didn't they? And my mum would play the piano.
Right.
And she was brilliant. Everyone liked her. My nan used to play the piano accordion.
Right.
My auntie used to sing. And on a Sunday, my brother would play guitar. They'd all get round. And then when I eventually started getting into my kit, I would join in as well. But in them days, there was only 2 channels on the TV.
Yeah.
The telly never come on till 5 o'clock. It was always off at 11.
Yeah.
And the neighbours, I think they used to join in, and some people would stand outside listening to us. I remember we lived in Blackdown Crescent in Leigh Park, and only a council house. No one owned their own houses then. And it's great community, And like my brother Dave being the only band in Leigh Park, as well as Bernie from the Storms and the Crescendos, now every other street's got a band in it, haven't they? You know what I mean?
So did you join your brother's band, or?
I did eventually, yeah. In 1965. By this time, I used to have my record player up, and my dad's a record player, playing all the Hollies records, listening to Bobby Elliot, my hero.
Yeah.
And when I eventually learned to play, and could screw, string 2 songs together, I was okay. I did my first gig at HMS Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
1965, July the 31st.
Oh, wow. Good
and I remember playing the last time the wrong beat.
Rolling Stones.
The Rolling Stones.
I love that.
And instead of swinging it, I was playing straight forward, and cramp was getting in my house. And I thought, I'm going to have to stop, but I carried on. And I remember it vividly. That was my very first gig.
Wow.
And then that was in a band called The Boys.
Yeah.
And then I just went from there.
Yeah.
And then I started moving about, answering adverts here and there. and I'll only stay with a band all the while it's fun. When politics creep in, I'm off, you know. But I've been very fortunate in my musical career to have gone from one good band to another.
Right.
And
until now.
Oh, it's great being part of your band. I love it. I love it. We're very fortunate to be given first refusal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is, it's not about the playing. That's the easiest thing, isn't it? You're looking for mates you get on with. You're looking for great guys that are on the same page. Guys that want to play, and not just once a month or only on Fridays.
Yeah.
But you're looking for a whole package.
Yeah.
And the playing part of it is the most easiest thing,
Absolutely,
isn't it? You're looking for a mate on the same level, you know. And I have been very fortunate.
So you mentioned the Hollies earlier on. I mean, I love the Hollies, one of the great bands, and I know one of your main sort of heroes is Bobby Elliot. What is it about Bobby Elliot's drumming, or that sort of, you know, is your thing?
Well, when I first heard Stay in 1963, I was 13.
Yeah.
You had all the other bands like Peter and Gordon, and you know, just going boom chip, boom chip, boom chip. Bobby Elliot comes along in Stay, and he's putting all these magnificent fills in, incredibly tight, very innovative, and I just thought, wow, and I aspired to be like him, you know. But I turned out more like Billy Elliot.
I remember an interview with Bobby Elliot when he was saying that when he joined, I suppose, up with the other guys in the band, the main reason he joined is he thought he could add something
exactly
to the
I
band.
Get that.
He
get
heard
that.
what was going on, and not to say it was wrong or bad or anything else, but he felt that he could add something additional to it to increase or enhance the sound.
Yeah, he used to play in a band with Tony Hicks called the Dolphins, and he went to see them because Alan Clark, as you know, was great mates with Graham Nash.
Yeah.
And they always had trouble sorting the bass player out because they always come and gone. They had got through a few of them.
Yeah.
And then they was asked Bobby if he was interested, and he went to see them and thought, like you said, I could drive this band a whole lot more. You know that gut feeling.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I feel about your band.
Yeah.
You know, you give the drummer scope. You're not just at the background knocking the beat out.
Yeah.
You're there to drive that song.
Yeah.
And it's lovely being in a band where you've got that license to do that.
Yeah.
And not, that's like pushing a car uphill with your brakes on.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm with you.
And yeah, so
he's the main man.
He's the guy that got me into the rock and roll circus.
Yeah, good.
And I've been fortunate to play practically every major city in England at various times with various bands.
Yeah.
Depending what
some of the other bands you played in, sort of what the highlights do you think?
Well, one of the greatest bands that stands in my mind is Shazam.
Yeah,
7-piece rock and roll band.
Yeah.
I play all styles, and this is why I've not pigeonholed myself. That's why I've always gone from one band to another.
Right.
I've been in the cabaret type bands doing the dances, white suits and bow ties. 5 years before John Travolta. I used to play in a band called Pendulum
as well?
That's right. No, not quite. And I used to do that. And I've played in rock and roll bands, 60s bands, funk bands, function bands. All my music is vast. You know, the only thing I don't play is jazz and hip hop.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But the Shazam days were 7 great Pompey guys, brilliant, genuine guys. We played all over the country. We'd go to Blackpool for one night just to play the Carla Grand, and then off to Aberdeen, and then we'd play the university up there, and then go to Forest Gate in London, and come home for a couple of days. Then
Yeah.
we'd be back out again.
Were these bookings done through an agent or some promoter?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they're not the sort of gigs that local guys from Pompey
No,
or whatever are going to
no.
organise themselves up in Blackpool, are they? You know.
They had a great agency. I think the Shakin' Stevens brother used to run a big agency, and we did a lot of work with Shakin' Stevens all over the country,
Right.
and that was fantastic.
When was that? Back in the 80s? When
No,
he was
in the
sort of-
70s. In
So
the
this was
76.
like before when he became really big, I
Yeah,
guess.
this was when he would do the Sunsets,
Yeah.
and then later on he left the Sunsets and went on his own and come into this old house, and then he went,
then he went-
he just
He had
catapulted.
so many hits in that.
We had a
period.
fantastic band called the Sunsets,
Right.
but he left them behind, you know, which was a
Okay.
shame.
Yeah.
But he was huge on the rock and roll circuit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that band took me everywhere.
Mm.
I had great time in the early 70s with Edward Bear. Fantastic.
I remember seeing Edward Bear.
Yeah, fantastic name.
At Fareham, I think, because they were a sort of local band.
Yeah,
weren't
they all lived in Fareham. Gudgeeth Lane, and two of the lads lived. I lived at Drayton, and two of the lads lived at Wickham, next door to each other.
Yeah.
You know, Terry and Tony, and there was
Yeah.
Pete Tucker,
Yeah.
and he was a marvelous character. You know, he just had great persona, great stage presence. And this is just before we got Joe Jackson and joined the band.
Yeah, I remember. And didn't they change the name from Edward Bear to Edwin Bear, or was it the other way around?
It went to Arms and Legs afterwards, because then a guy called Mark Andrews come in, another great musician from way back.
I remember Arms and Legs. I remember the name.
Yeah,
of the band.
they carried the name on. No, it was always Edward Bear.
So when was Joe Jackson playing with them then? Because I remember seeing him at Fareham. Well, would have been then Fareham Working Men's.
Yeah, we used to play there on a Sunday night. Yeah,
and I didn't know him from Adam in those days, of course, at all, because he wasn't famous in his own right there. And what I remember is they played Nut Rocker. And he was on the keyboard, you know, because obviously he was an expert pianist. And I remember it standing out, and I didn't know any different at the time, other than it was great, you know. And then later on, of course, we found out that he'd become a sort of solo act and went on to do great things.
Yeah, he is brilliant. Brilliant. No disrespect, Joe. Brilliant musician, but you could see the way why he got on where he went and the direction he took, because he knew what he wanted, and that's all he wanted.
Yeah.
And there was no meeting in the middle or compromise.
Right.
It was Joe's way or no way.
Yeah.
But I mean that respectfully, because I don't go ripping people off.
And again, I guess that's how a lot of people become successful, because they're very single-minded and
he knew
focused,
what he wanted and the direction to go.
There is no compromise, if you like. You know?
Great showman.
Yeah.
But I left just. I remember going to the Bob Potter Studios and rehearsing him, you know, auditioning him, and we were up in Camberley. Bob Potter used to work us all over the country.
Right.
When we had our transit sign written with these 3 international phone numbers on the back doors. Oh, great, my voice, with his big fat cigar in his mouth. You know. He thought we were. You know, he looked after us after that.
Yeah.
All we did was have the van sign written with his name and numbers on.
Right.
And he's just looked after us.
Yeah.
We played everywhere, Penzance, the other end of the country, all over.
Yeah.
I was 23 at the time, and it was great days.
Probably the right age to be doing that sort of.
Yeah, I loved it.
A lot of travelling around, but and I guess travelling in those days weren't quite as easy as what it is today. You know.
No.
Sitting there reading maps as you drive.
No sat navs.
No, absolutely not. No.
You're looking for Harry's Bar up in Newcastle.
Yeah.
You can get to Newcastle, but where's Harry's Bar?
Yeah, well,
that's the other side of town, mate.
The last detail. Yeah.
They're great days. I've spent a lot of time travelling and playing, and all over Ireland and that. And, I went to Malta and Germany with the Street Rods. They're another great rock and roll band. They were like, I love Razzmatazz and Showtime. You know, the more Razzmatazz there is to a band, the happier I am.
Yeah,
you know.
More about a show than just
Yeah.
a gig.
Yeah. I'm a bit of an old tartary. I just love dressing up. You know, I've played in all sorts of bands. Another good band I played with was a really good band, a local band, Route 66.
Yeah,
I played with them in the
name.
90s. And they used to play opposite your other guy, Ron Gear.
Yeah,
He had a band called Fifth Gear.
that's right.
And Route 66 and Fifth Gear were like two of the main bands in Southampton.
Yeah,
I was with them 7 years.
Yeah.
Great band.
Yeah.
Barry and Colin Thornton. Never had one crossword with them in 7 years. That takes a lot of doing.
Did you meet Ron
several times?
Back in the day, as it were.
Yeah, several times. We always got on great.
Yeah.
We weren't rivalries because I'm not in competition with anyone.
Yeah.
I go out and play. I enjoy myself. I love meeting people.
Sure.
I'm a chatty person.
Yeah.
And I love it for what it is, you know. And I've always got places to go, always places to look forward to.
Yeah.
You know, and 10 bob a night. And I look forward to my cheeseburgers afterwards, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
If you cut my arm, it wouldn't bleed. It would be like a Blackpool Rock saying "bang" all the way through, like Blackpool Rock.
Yeah.
I'm just a total nutter, really.
So a lifetime playing in bands and still doing it.
Yeah, and I've been very fortunate. I met my gorgeous wife in 1967, playing with the great band, the Outer Limits. And I met her at the Royal Ballrooms where all the bands used to play.
Right.
She thought I'd come from Bournemouth, but I didn't. And, we met and fell in love at first sight. I got married in 1969, and she never, ever, I can say this with my hand on my heart, Trisha never stood in the way about me playing. That's why I have trouble playing in bands when their wives don't want me to play next week or Friday or Saturday. But I don't understand that, because Trish was a lovely wife and a homemaker, and she said, as long as you got money to send home, Dan, and enough to live on when you're up the other end of the country, as long as you come home, I don't mind what you do. So I had a license to...
You're probably very lucky.
I was very lucky,
because I think a lot of people wouldn't have that flexibility, if you like.
I do understand that, and this is why
kids involved and that sort of
stuff. My boy was 2 years old when I was travelling around the country with another band. I worked with Chicory Chip for quite a few years, but I wasn't on the record. I'd like to go. I wasn't on the record. I was just fortunate enough to be in the band, which is crazy, because we'd turn up at a gig, we'd walk on stage. I had all my hair right down here, then thick and long and black, like D'Artagnan. And people would applaud us before we played the first song. I'm what, 77, 78, 40 years down the road, and I have to work all night to get applause. And then I just walked on stage, and because it's a name, you get that reception straight away.
Yeah, because they have a big hit record, and they've been on top of the pops and all this.
They've been on some of the...
You're in a different...
a different league, you know.
Yeah, a different league.
I turn up and carry my own cases in them days where people do it for us. Open the door for these lads, Chicory Tips here, you know. And suddenly, they had 5 hits. They had Son of My Father, which was massive hit. The very first record I ever synced on. Then they had Cigarettes and Wine, Josie, Hey, What's Your Name, and Good Grief Christina.
Yeah, I remember that one.
We started going to all the universities playing Chicken in the Basket place, because Chicory Chip were massive in 72, but they'd had their day. So we were Chicken in the Basket band and the university band. So we started doing tracks off All the Worlds, which we loved. But people were phoning the agency up saying, we're not hearing Good Christina and all that. So it got a bit silly. And then you hit the 80s with Soft Cell coming out, Visage, all with the synths on. And suddenly I'm thinking, people think I'm already there and I've not got there. And how am I going to get there playing a band where people think I'm already arrived? But I haven't arrived. I'm only along for the ride. So I didn't get that. So we we sort of moved on,
Yeah.
and then I left, and then I did other things.
Do you
But I
think?
travelled the country with that band, and that was
Do
great.
you think bands have a sort of a natural time period, if you like,
Yeah,
where it
yeah.
sort
Nothing
of
lasts forever.
it peters out, if you like, for one reason or another? Not for any specific reason, maybe, but sometimes it just had its day.
Yeah, every band
Bands,
has its day,
yeah,
And
yeah,
what's fashionable this year, 2 years' time, it's out of date, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
You find that with all these pop bands, where all the 13-year-olds are buying their records, great. When they grow up and they're 16, 17, their music
They've
tastes
moved on,
change.
yeah,
So suddenly
absolutely.
there's no market because the kids are now 12 and 13 were only 8 and 9.
Yeah.
So they got their own music. So suddenly pop bands are out on a wing and a prayer.
Yeah.
They've only got a lifespan of so many years.
There's very few that lasts thing, because the Rolling Stones would probably be an exception.
Yeah.
And I can remember interviews with them guys in the very early days, and they sort of said, and even the Beatles as well, how long do you think this is going to last? And they sort of said, probably a couple of years, 2 or 3 years.
I remember them saying
that was the expectation.
Yeah.
And some of them are still going today in different forms, but the Stones have more or less been consistently going, 1 or 2 lineup changes. The Beatles obviously come to an end in around 1970.
Yeah.
But we're talking interviews back in 1962, 63, so they still well outlasted the period that they probably
couldn't imagine lasting that long, could they?
No.
And when you think how famous they were, and everybody knows everybody in the country, in the world,
Yeah.
John, Paul, George and Ringo, they know the Beatles. That's what you call success.
Oh, absolutely.
And Ringo, I think, is a fantastic drummer because he's left-handed,
Yeah.
he plays right-handed.
Yeah.
That's why he gets all these double rolls in.
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot of people not Ringo, but he's a fantastic drummer.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm not a drummer, but I've always thought he's underrated. His contribution to what the Beatles did was often sort of very low level to other people because of how successful Lennon and McCartney were writing the songs and so on and being the lead singers and everything else.
Yeah, yeah.
And, he was sort of dwarfed a little bit by that. But actually, when you listen to his drumming on some of the songs that they'd written,
exactly,
it's quite clever,
Compared to some of the drummers, how they play. I mean, how he interpreted "Come Together." Dum, 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 dum,
yeah.
I Feel Fine. What a great beat! Yeah. I Feel Fine.
Ticket to Ride.
Ticket to Ride. Some drummers would have gone boom chip, boom chip, boom chip.
Yeah.
But he was an innovator of a great amount of songs.
He invented some great stuff.
And you listen to Saw Her Standing there on the Please Please Me album. Fantastic drumming.
Yeah.
Fantastic drumming.
Yeah.
Massive. He's not my inspiration, but I think
he's just very, in my opinion, very underrated for his contribution to what they did. Unfortunately for him, the other guys were so successful, maybe on a much bigger scale, that anything he did was sort of seen as low,
low key, wasn't it?
Fairly low level. If he'd have been in another band, he could have been sort of, almost the main guy, as it were.
But again, like we said, I mean, like Pete Best. I mean, how do you live knowing that you're in the greatest band in the world, that you got thrown out, and then you're not?
Yeah.
And then, but apparently when they were in Hamburg, Ringo used to go next door and watch them play anyway. So he was interested. Like, I used to come watch your band, didn't I?
Yeah. Okay.
And he'd go and listen to them. He got on great with them. Their humour was the same.
Yeah.
Pete Best didn't want to change his hairstyle, did he? Even though all the girls loved him.
No.
And then when they come back from Germany with all what Astrid designed for them, and all their leather gear, they must have, in those days, because so at the beginning, they must have looked like they come from outer space.
Yeah.
Because everyone was walking around like with the Cliffs and Craig Douglas hairstyles, and and Tony Curtis hairstyles. Suddenly you got 4 mop tops, and their hair was only on their collar.
Yeah.
But no one had seen that before.
No, it was still seen as being very long in comparison to what it became in the 70s.
It's understandable they took off, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And writing their own songs. No one did that, did they?
I think with them, everything was about the right time, wasn't it? Because they wrote their own songs. They had a look in terms of the hairstyles. When Epstein put them in their suits and so on, and the sound, everything about it was different.
Even the way they're positioned on stage, George and
Yeah.
Paul using the same mic, John over
Yeah,
there,
the
Ringo
look-
always on a drum riser.
Yeah, and
They
a
had-
high drum riser as
Yeah,
well. I mean,
they had an image that no one else could match.
yeah, yeah,
You know.
all about the right music at the right time.
Yeah,
If anyone changed the face of pop music,
and all their
definitely
songs like "Please Remember How I Feel About You," "I Could Never Really Love Without You," "I Need You," you know, "Please Mr. Postman," you know, "I'm Happy Just As You're Gonna Lose That Girl," all stories that everyone that's been in love or with a girlfriend could relate to. They're in a cemetery and they're laying in a grave and sees Eleanor Rigby, so they wrote a song about it. Geniuses, absolute geniuses.
Yeah, fantastic.
And another favourite band is alongside the Hollies, you know.
Yeah.
And
we're still playing their songs today, and probably will be for forever.
60 years on. It's fantastic, you know.
Yeah, brilliant.
I remember seeing them on Thank You Lucky Stars with Please Please Me in 1963.
Yeah.
Like glued to the telly, you know, what is this? You know.
You can imagine the American audience when they first appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, because again, you know, it was like something from outer space turning up there, really. You know, the look, the sound, everything about it.
Fancy in America, 52 states in America, you know, fit England, look, God knows how many times, and all that lot tuning in to the biggest show on TV.
Yeah.
What a launch.
The biggest audience is one that the American TV had ever experienced.
What an incredible launch. You know,
you
can see why they got disillusioned, because they're going from one hotel to one hotel. They weren't allowed outside, was they?
Well, it would have probably been unsafe, I would have thought, to go anywhere, because, as you said, with all the crowds and everything.
And being at Shea Stadium, you know, there was no, I mean, you go and watch a concert now at the Wedgwood Rooms, it's 10,000 watt PA, mixing desk as big as your conservatory. And what they turned up with 50 watt Fox speakers and PAs, you know, and you couldn't hear them because they're all screaming.
Well, in a lot of cases, they just used the house PA system, which was just for announcements and things. It wasn't really a musical PA system.
And I heard a story about them that they, half the time, they couldn't hear what each other were playing because they had no monitors in them days. And it's just exciting times. It was all new, all at the beginning. We'd come out the war days, hadn't we? We'd come out the rock and roll days, which was great. We never rock and roll, because all the big bands got their influences from all the early rock and rollers, didn't they? From all the Americans. So, you can see where it progressed from, couldn't you? You know.
Right place, right time, I reckon.
Definitely.
Great.
Ringo was definitely, wasn't he?
Yeah. What a bit of luck that was for him.
Fantastic.
But then I suppose, you know, it was probably meant to be. They used to say about Ringo, you know, that he is a Beatle. Where Pete Best, they said, although he was in the Beatles as a band,
he wasn't
a Beatle. In terms of their humour, the way they acted, the way they did everything, Ringo fitted in, supposedly, and he sort of didn't. He was, if you forget the drumming issue out of it, which is another controversial subject, I suppose. But Ringo had the humour. He had the sort of...
They bounced, didn't they? They bounced.
Yeah, he was like the rest of them.
You click.
They were all the same.
You can play... I've had the opportunity of playing with great bands with some fantastic musicians, but you get 5 egos that are all fantastic musicians. Don't always work.
No.
Musically it does.
Yeah.
But behind the stage, everyone thinks they're the star of the show. Well, to me... If there's 4, 5, 6, 3, 2, whatever, you're selling the act, not yourself. You're only part of that. You're only part of that act. You know, I've played in some great bands where the singers thought without them the band wouldn't exist, and I'd say, well, you're only the singer. Well, you're only the drummer. I said, yeah, but there's 6 of us, there's 7 of us, there's 8 of us, whatever. You know, you're a team, you're a unit, you're a product, you're a brand, you're selling that brand, so you do everything you can to make it work, don't you? And when you all get on with each other, that is so simple. But if you go into Birmingham with a bloke that you really can't stand, but he's a great piano player or great great guitarist, but you got nothing in common with it. Isn't it never going to work?
No, for sure.
That's why you're looking for a band with good mates in.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very fortunate. And I'd like to put this on record, how we got together. I had a very successful band going back that I put together, which was my baby. I planted the seed, I watered it, it grew, went from a bush to a tree, and we were one of the busiest bands in Pompey, like yourselves. But we were suddenly on a different page because of work volume and people's commitments. I understand that, so I become what happens now? And the very next week, when I'm panicking inside, thinking, where are we going? You offered me a job because your drummer decided that he was having enough.
Yeah,
so
move on.
How do things? You couldn't write that, could you?
No.
There was no underhanded. There was no secret auditions. It was just the same week. I'm thinking I've got to look for another band. And you're thinking the same week, we've got to look for another drummer.
Yeah, that's right.
And being given first refusal, I'm happy as a Sandman.
Yeah.
I'm great to be a pop picker.
Well, let's have a chat. We're going to have a sort of part 2 of this discussion about joining the Pop Pickers and what we're up to these days.
Yeah.
So we'll take a slight pause and we'll come back and start talking about the Pop Pickers band.
Cool.